Hi, everyone. Welcome back to KETIV Virtual Academy. I'm DJ Munzik, Head of Marketing at KETIV, and today we're kicking off something special, the Autodesk Inventor Power Hour. We've pulled together three of our most popular Inventor sessions into one fast-moving hour. First up is EZ-UCS for Inventor, where you're going to see how easy it is to place and manage your coordinate systems exactly where you need them. No gymnastics required. Then we're going to move into developing iLogic add-ins, where you'll learn how to turn your iLogic rules into powerful, reusable tools your whole team can rely on. Finally, we'll wrap up with VSCode snippet templates for automation, a simple way to speed up your automation workflow and keep your code clean and consistent. If you're an Inventor Power user or just ready to automate the busy work, you're in the right place. Let's get started with EZ-UCS for Inventor with Justin. Justin, take it away.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin Gao. I am an application and QA engineer here at KETIV Technologies. And today we have a very neat tool that we would like to share with you guys today. It's called EZ-UCS. So a little introduction on myself. Like I said, I am an application and QA engineer at KETIV. I work mainly on the delivery team where I do a lot of content creation for automation, specifically a lot of design automation projects where I will design out parts and make them ready for automation with iLogic, external APIs, etc. And then also for the QA engineering portion, what I do is I test a lot of automation projects that leave and go to the customer, make sure we catch all the issues before the customer catches them. And my background is in mechanical engineering. I went to Cal Poly Pomona. So one thing I do want to say is that we are really, really close to reaching 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. So please like, subscribe. It doesn't hurt. It's free. And it really helps us out in the long run. So if you guys can go over to our YouTube page, KETIV Technologies, give us a subscribe. It lets us know that you like what we are creating. So a little overview of what is EZ-UCS and why EZ-UCS. So EZ-UCS was designed and came out in 2020. A developer on our team by the name of Christine Bonney, she created that tool for one of our design automation customers because they had a very complex assembly that they wanted to reuse for automation. But the problem was that we couldn't predict where the origin point was because when they made it, it was always in a different place every single time, depending on which engineer had their hands on the assembly. So with EZ-UCS, we were easily able to place a origin point essentially with a bunch of different planes and axes. So we can say, hey, at this point right here, we want to pick it up and be able to place it at that same point every single time. So where does this come into play? Like I said, if you have a assembly that has an unpredictable origin point, you can use the tool, drop in a UCS, and it comes with all the coordinate points. You can easily use those as your placement planes. Other places I've seen people use it is like in the HVAC industry, they will use the EZ-UCS, or they will use a UCS to show the direction of airflow. So that's another way to do it. All right. So how do you get this tool? First off, it's free. We'd like to give it to you guys so you guys can play around with it, see how you like it. And there's three ways you guys can install it. First way is through a web page. And then we also offer an installer file as well as a zip file. So if you're not able to run the installer, you guys can take the zip file and throw it into the correct destination. So I'll show you guys how it's done here. So if we get out of this PowerPoint, I'm going to go ahead and download the installer file as well as the zip file. And then this is the web page that it lands on. You can get the Inventor add-in right here. So if we go to the File Explorer, let's take a look at where these have landed. So I have two zips files right here. So I'm going to go ahead and extract both of them just to show you guys. So we'll extract that one. And then we will extract this guy. So let's go ahead and run the installer first. So if I double click on the installer down here, it is going to show up with this form right here. And we're going to go ahead and press click and install. And this way, if you run the installer, it'll throw all the files exactly where you need to have it. You don't have to worry about navigating there and putting it in the right place. If you want to go down the road of the zip file, what we'll do is make sure that you want to go to this file path right here. I already have it saved on the side, but I'll walk you guys through it. You want to make sure you go to Program Data, Autodesk, Inventor Add-ins. If you don't see Program Data as a file option under your C drive, you might have hidden files put on. So you make sure you check that you want to be able to see the hidden files. And then in here, the installer throws it right here. It's called EZ-UCS. If I double click it, you're going to see that there's a couple of DLLs in there that are associated with EZ-UCS, as well as down the road, if you need to uninstall it, install a new version, there's an uninstall that you could run and it'll just delete everything there. So if you go down the path of the zip file, you can just copy it and then paste it in this location right here. And you will have the same exact files, just without the uninstall tools. All right, and that's all you need to set it up on your machine. Now, in order to set it up in Inventor, let's go ahead and open up Inventor. So in Inventor, we're going to go ahead and go into the Tools tab, and there's going to be a button that's called Add-ins. When we press on Add-ins, we're going to scroll down, and we're going to see our tool called EZ-UCS here. Sometimes it comes in looking like this, where it's blocked. We want to make sure that we unblock it, and we always want to load it automatically and always check loaded, unloaded, and we're going to go ahead and press OK. So now let's go ahead and open up an assembly that we want to put EZ-UCS in. So let's go ahead and open up this AC representation right here. So if we're looking at this assembly right here, I'm going to go ahead and show you the center point. And when I press on the center point, you're not going to really see where that is. But if I show it to you from a top-down view, you're going to see that it's somewhere off in the middle of nowhere, somewhere that we're not really expecting it. And the first thing with automation is that we love predictability. The more predictable a model is, the easier it is to manipulate it to do exactly what you want it to do. So that's where it is. Here are the planes. If I highlight them, so you can see that some are really random. And in the case of very, very complex assemblies, you don't want to remake your assembly to put the origin point where you want it. So this is where the tool comes in. So at the top on the ribbon, you're going to see that you have something called KETIV utilities. If we go ahead and click on there, you're going to see a tool that's called EZ-UCS. If I click on the tool, you're going to see a form that pops up like this. And let's go ahead and click on the question mark. So on the question mark, it's a little about box about EZ-UCS. So you have a version number right there, and then you have our logo. So down the road, if issue arises and we make iterations to this tool, you're going to see this version number change to a newer date. And that newer date will indicate that, hey, the tool has been updated. It's a newer one. And this is what this about page is for. If we go ahead and press OK, you're back into the tool. And the tool is actually very easy to use. So let's say I want to pick up, I want to show the flow of air. And how I show it is the x-axis shows the positive flow of air. So if I want the air to come back from this AC unit to the front, I want to show the x-axis pointing this way. So let's go ahead and choose an origin. And when you click on the origin, it's asking for a point. So I'm going to just snap it in this corner right here. And now it's going to ask you for your x-axis. So what direction do you want your x-axis to point? Choose the plane that you want it to point into. So I want it here. And then my y-axis, I just want it pointed upwards. So I have those three selections. You're going to see the colors change. And when I press create, you're going to see that my x-axis is pointing in the direction of the air that I want. So if I do a little drawing, it looks like it's going this way. All right. So that's one meaningful way of doing UCS. The other way I was talking about was with creating new points so you could use it to constrain to. So if I open up my EZ-UCS tool again, let's just say I want to pick up these mounting holes at the bottom. So if I select my origin, you're going to see that I'm not able to pick up the center of that hole because there's no point. What we can do is we could throw a sketch on there. And it's going to take me to a random place. I'm going to go back to that hole, and I'm going to go ahead and project the geometry on that. And then I will get out of the sketch. And then when I get out of the sketch, I can go ahead and go back into my tool. And if I select my origin point, I can pick up that projected geometry because it's going to recognize that. And let's just say I'm going to have my x-axis pointed out this way, and then I want my y-axis pointing upwards. So I'm going to go ahead and select this plane, press create, and it picks up that hole. If I wanted to pick up the rear hole as well, what I could do is go back into my sketch here, and I can project this geometry back here. And assign my EZ-UCS one more time. Select my origin, select the direction of the x-axis, select the direction of the y-axis. Press create, and now you're going to see I have 3 meaningful points to pick up for constraint, as well as showing the airflow out of my air conditioner. So when we go into another assembly, for example, let's see. You're going to see I have a mounting block here. If I go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Let's place the AC in here. I could use the UCS that are assigned because they come in as features now, and I can assign them and constrain them to the UCS that are existing on this mounting block. So to show you guys, we'll go ahead and open up the constrain, and I'll go UCS1 to UCS2, and I'll select center point to center point, and you're going to see that now my holes are aligned on there, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing for the back. And that way you can fully constrain your parts to UCS and not have to rely on the origin point or the original origin point of this AC. So one more thing that I do want to show you guys is if you're doing a lot of automation, one tool that was very, very useful is Nifty Attributes. That's a tool that Brian Eakins released. And if you have this tool, our user coordinate systems come in with some tags on there that you could call on in external API to figure out, hey, I have this point, can I use it? And pick up the planes and all that stuff from there. So very, very useful tool. Some of you guys might ask, hey, Justin, if you go to the 3D model tab, under work features, there is a UCS tool there. Why did you guys create a tool? One of the reasons why we created the tool because we didn't like the way the UCS tool interacted at an assembly level. The part level UCS tool is fantastic, works really easily, great out of the box. But the UCS tool at the assembly level was kind of hard to use, hard to understand. It doesn't really tell you much. So if we press it here, it just says, hey, drag UCS to locate. Doesn't give you a lot of information. So we created the EZ-UCS tool to interact very similarly to the part level. So if we open up a part, for example, you're going to see that there isn't a KETIV tab on the top for EZ-UCS. It's only going to be found at the assembly level. All right, so that's how EZ-UCS works. Like I said, these are the locations that you can find them at. You can find them on the web page, the installer file, or the zip file. And we do have the option to give you guys the source code. If that's something that you guys really want, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to kind of help you guys get those source code And one thing we do want to let you guys know is that the source code is in C sharp. So if that's something you guys are familiar with, great. But that's something to note. So if that's something you guys are looking for, source code, feel free to reach out to me here. This is my email. Contact us at KETIV. Connect with us on LinkedIn. This is my LinkedIn file right here. Be more than happy to assist you in any ways.
Nice work, Justin. EZ-UCS is one of those utilities that seems small until you start using it every day. Then you wonder how you ever worked without it in Inventor. Now that we've got coordinate systems handled, let's talk into some real automation. Up next, we'll take a look at developing iLogic add-ins, turning quick rules into serious design tools. Let's get started with that right now.
Thanks, DJ. Like DJ said, we're going to be focused on snippets and templates today. So let's dive in. First, I'll talk a little bit about myself and my background. I'm a senior application engineer at KETIV, which means that I develop software solutions for our customers. And that can range from anything like a project of finding all the different bolt possibilities in your assembly, from the holes and tags and different things you have in there, to assembly configurators for a elevator hoistway, or down to a kitchen sink for a restaurant or a hotel. So we deal with a lot of different types of companies and help make their design process faster and with less mistakes. As far as my background, I graduated from Brigham Young University with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And I've worked in several companies over the years in the same type of sphere in the knowledge-based engineering and design automation. Some of those companies are General Motors, Autodesk, BTC. So before we dive into talking about snippets and templates, one thing as you watch this and are looking for more, you can also check out KETIV's EZ-UCS tool. My teammate Justin Chow goes through that and has developed it, and feel free to grab it. It's a free download add-in for Inventor, and it also includes a tutorial how to use it. So you can easily drop in UCSs into Inventor a little simpler than the built-in tool. So with that, let's jump into talking about snippets. So what is a snippet? If you use Visual Studio, you know that it's very good at helping you code faster and more mistake-free with stuff like IntelliSense and your solution browser and different things like that. So if you've never worked with snippets before, snippets is a chunk of code that you can write beforehand and have changeable variables inside of it that you can at will populate into your code. And I'm going to kind of show you an example of this as we start out here. So I'm going to pop up Visual Studio, drag it over here, and let's go look at it. So snippets, if you want to find where to insert a snippet, the longest and probably version of going and finding it that I wouldn't recommend is up here in the edit drop down. So if you go to edit, come down here to IntelliSense, you can find insert snippet. You'll also see a keyboard shortcut here. So you can click that, and there you're into snippets. You see a whole lot of folders. I like to keep all my snippets in my code snippets. Click there, and you can see 4 options that I've brought over to Visual Studio 2022 for the purpose of this KVA. So then you can pick one, and blam, you have code right in your file. And these can be edited. So if we wanted our new property to be property, like we'll just say prop1, and we want it to be a double, we can go ahead and edit those and hit enter. There we have a new property really quick. Now going and finding that is kind of annoying. There are better ways to do that. One of them is just simply right click, and you've got your insert snippet again. We can do another one. So we can come click here, hit our read-only property, and do a read-only leave it as an integer if we wanted to. There we go. And then there's also the hotkey that I showed you earlier, which is Control K, Control X will launch the same little menu right there. So that gives you an idea of how to insert your snippets, what kind of they are, and what we're dealing with. But you might be asking, well, how do I get those all set up? Where do I find them? I'm going to go delete all these, and let's go look at that. So the place of where you find them is this path right here. So if you go into your Visual Studio folder in Documents, you're going to have a folder of code snippets. And you pick your language. We're using Visual Basic. And there's that folder, My Code Snippets. There's going to be other folders there that you can set up. You can have a team folder that you all share one, and then you can have your personal ones, however you want to do it. Inside that folder, you will see files like this, .snippet. So those are those 4 options that popped up on the menu that we saw. We're going to be mostly just looking at this define a property .snippet. Here is an example. I also put the 3 ways that you can insert them here. Now you can make these snippets from scratch. You can also just copy these and edit it. But if you want to make it from scratch, here's a link to a Microsoft tutorial, a walkthrough on creating a code snippet. But you're going to make an XML file, and they give you some example code that's pretty bare bones of what you can put in. But for you guys, I've gone ahead and put the code up here, and we'll look at it in Visual Studio in a second. And we're going to walk through kind of line by line-ish to look at each part. So here's some of the code. We're going to look at the header section. So when you open up that snippet file, this is what you're going to see. And in the header, we can do several things. So 3 things that we want to focus on. Title. This is the name of the snippet that shows up in the menu. So you see this menu, looks familiar. We looked at it just a little bit ago. So here's property. It said property. If I put something here like awesome snippet, it would say awesome snippet right there. Next is your description. This only shows up when you mouse over, so it's a tooltip, and you can see there defines a property with a backing field, and that's exactly what we put there. So you can edit that if you want to change that tooltip. And finally, we talked about 3 different ways to input a snippet. There's a 4th, and that's a shortcut. So here we have shortcut property. Down here on the tooltip, you'll notice it's different. It says PPTY. That's because I changed it. But I didn't change it up here because I wanted to point something out to you. Property is a reserved name in Visual Studio and VB. So you don't want to use a reserved name, because if you type property in, it's going to just, and hit tab, it will default to the reserved name property. So we had it like this. I've changed it to be PPTY. There's nothing using that. So now, if we want to insert a snippet, or this specific snippet, we can just type PPTY, hit tab, and it'll pop right in. So that's header. Let's go to the next section of code, actually 2 sections. We're going to focus on our declarations. Those are basically equivalent to variables. And then also the block of code, where we write in the literal text that's going to show up in our snippet. So declarations, well, they have an ID, tooltip, and a default value. So if we look at these, here's our first declaration. It's the property name. So this is the name. If you look down here, we're going to default it to new property. You see that new property underlined with red? It's going to show up down here. The ID is the name that we're going to use in the code section when we want, to have it show up. So I've underlined it in pink. You can see it down here in pink as well. And then the final thing in the middle there is tooltip. Once again, if you mouse over once you put your snippet in, the variable, it will give you the tooltip. So I've highlighted the second declaration here, second variable, which is the type. And now when we hover over that string, it'll give replace with the property type. So that's kind of anatomy there of the declarations and how you can edit those and change those up. You can add more declarations by copying these the text between the literal tags and just add them in and edit them that way. Now let's focus on the code. So this is where you actually get the text of your snippet that'll pop in. So right behind these two brackets, so here's an open bracket, here's a closed bracket, you can see all this text that shows up in kind of a grayed out color. This is what your snippet's going to look like. And so you can put that in just kind of verbatim, except for the different variables, the declarations you've made before. So where you want those variables you'd like to be able to change, you put that in. So there's property name. Notice that it's between two $signs here. So you can see property name here. It's going to change there, there, and there. You can even use these in comments, and I'll show you that in a little bit. Here's the second variable, property type, and we put it in there 3 different types. So we have our property name as type string, or that's the default value, but we could change the default to double if we wanted to. So there is kind of the anatomy of the code behind snippets. Now let's go look at this in Visual Studio. So here we have our project, just a demo project. I'm going to go grab Windows Explorer here, and let's navigate to, oh, come on over here. There we go. Our Visual Studio 2022. We go into Code Snippets, go into Visual Basic, and there's that folder, My Code Snippets. Now I'm going to pick this first one, and I'm going to open it with Visual Studio 2022. And it pops up even in our project. Quite useful. So now let's look at a couple things that we can do. This is the code that you saw on the PowerPoint slide, but we can change some things here. So let's say we wanted to add to this comment here something that said this property of type this. Okay, so just we could say read write property, property name. So there's the $, property name, another $, is of type, and drop in property type, and close it out with a $. So this will just give us a little blurb saying this property is of type this in our comment, so that when they mouse over the property in a different file, they can see this comment here. So another point, I mentioned that we changed this from property to PPTY. There it is. So you could change this to whatever seems useful to you. I'll go ahead and save that. Let's go back here, and now I'll show you using that shortcut. I'll just hit Tab, and it drops in the snippet, and I can say, well, I want number X, and I want it of type double, and hit Tab, and you'll notice it changed all of those, and now we have here number X is of type double. So if we come in here and say number X, maybe dim something up, dim X equals, we'll see that it will give us that comment right here, and you can see the stuff we put in the snippet. So pretty simple, but as you build a library of snippets between your team and just in your own personal snippet folder, it can be pretty powerful to speed up development. I mean, I know when I start out a class, there can be a number of properties that I'm having to drop in. And you can do this for read-only property. You can do this for methods. Anything that you're doing repeatedly, you can use it quite effectively. So now why don't we go back? We'll go back to the PowerPoint, and let's talk about templates. So templates are a little different. It's similar in some ways in the fact that you're having code that you've prepared beforehand, and being able to use it when iteratively when you need it. So a template is, let's say you're making a new class object in your project. You have a part type that you want to make a class object that holds all the information for it. We'll call it widget. And actually, let's do this with Visual Studio. So I'll pop up Visual Studio. I'll go ahead and get rid of our definer property snippet here, and let's add in a new class. So when you add a new class, you usually see this screen. And here is your generic class. Now you'll notice we have a template here, KETIV class template, that we use. And so it's a little different, and I'll show you the differences. If we add a class, so let's say we're going to have this class be a K widget class. Go ahead and add that in. Pops it up. It's pretty bare bones, right? There's like 5 words on it. And if I wanted to go in, put comments, regions separating my code from constructors to methods to enums or anything, I got to do that repetitively every time I make a class. So why don't we come up with a template that does all that for us? So if we go ahead and add another class, this time we're going to select, and I'm going to leave the generic name here just so that you can see kind of the difference. And we'll add the template. And boom, a lot more than 5 words, right? We've got our comments. We've got our different regions here. So for properties that we can add in using our snippets we just learned, there's constructors, methods, and enums, along with comments that have that class name that we chose not to change this time around. So you can see how quickly that can save you time as you're dropping in new class objects, or it could be a template for any type of item. So how do we get here? Well, let's jump back to the PowerPoint and we'll look at that. So there's going to be 3 files with 3 with an image that we're going to use. Actually, let me pop that up and we can see from our folder, we were in snippets. Let's go back to Visual Studio 2022 folder. We're going to go templates, item templates. And then this one, instead of Visual Basic, we're just going to pick this KETIV class template. But you can set up a bunch of different templates here. And you'll notice here are our 3 files. So there's the image, which if I double click on, pull up, you'll recognize is that K image that we had as we went in to add the class file. And then we have 2 code files. One is a Visual Basic file. This one is going to be where you put your code or the text that you want to show up in your template. Then next, it's going to be this .vs template file. And this is kind of the connector between Visual Studio and this code file, this VB file that you have. And so this is the file that tells when Visual Studio pops up that that menu where you're selecting, I want a class, I want to, all these different things, that you can put in the icon and everything that you need to connect it to this file. So let's go look at here. So I'll go ahead and open this with Visual Studio 2022. And we'll jump back to the PowerPoint for a second and kind of walk through the code. So here, it's only 17 lines, so it's not that complicated, but it does have some variables that we want to or tags we want to go look at. So first, default name. This is that default name that we left as default in the class we made. So you can edit that there. Has the name that will show up on the menu when you're picking between class or form or this template. It has a description, so you can edit that. Also has a project type, Visual Basic is our project type. Has a sort order, so you can edit how it shows up in that menu. And then here it has that icon. So this is just the name of the icon. If I pop up the Windows Explorer in the folder, see underscore template icon.png. And then we have a project item. Now this has a lot of text there that you can just leave as is, copy paste. What you want to be aware of is this right here. It's KETIV organized class.vb. This is the name of this folder right there. So this is where it connects those two. So we had the connection from the icon to the name here, and also to the VB file class name. Then one final thing that you can do if you want to is add some custom parameters. Now there's going to be some reserved parameters that we'll use, and those kind of you just get for free. You don't have to do anything here for them. But if you want custom parameters, you need to add in this block of text. So this tag where custom parameters, and then the individual line custom parameter. And here it has a name that you can input in your text, and then the value that will be there. And so you could change this to have it show up a lot through your code. And I'll show you kind of how you can input that. So let's go ahead and go look at that next file. So here is the VB file that has kind of your text, and it should look familiar. This is what popped up when we added a KETIV class template object. So a couple things here. You'll notice this $signs again. So this is the variable. This is one of the reserved template parameters. And there's a list of them. If you want to go find the list, I've added a link here on the PowerPoint. But it has a list here of all the reserved template parameters that you can use. And that can't be, you can't use them as custom parameters, obviously. But I mean, you're literally just going to write out your template how you want it to show up. And this reserved parameter is just that saved name. So if we named our class Bob, this would say Bob through public class Bob, and then all the comments would have that in there. Probably shouldn't name your class Bob though. Then finally, let's talk about custom parameters. So custom parameters, just like the reserved parameters, you will put in between $signs, and then you'll put in that name that you made in the last file. So if we go back up, this name here, and then it'll give you that value there. And I'll show that to you in Visual Studio. So let's open up this one. Go here, run it, pull it over here. So here we have our KETIV organized class. So you can see the name here, but let's say we wanted to, we had a customer that wanted its name at the top of every class for the project we were doing. We could say this class is created for, and then we do customer name, and be careful of capitalization, it will catch you. But that just matches the variable. And currently, if I go to here, we got our customer name. If I wanted to change this, I could say, I don't know, we'll say DJ's Awesome Company. Right there. Let me save all that. And now that should populate in there. And you can go in and edit more things. You can have more custom parameters. This is fairly simple, but you can come up with templates for all your different type of class object needs. But now that we save that, we can come in here and say add, go down and add a class. There's our KETIV class, and we'll say widget, widget 2, because we already have one in there. We didn't delete. We'll go ahead and add that, and boom, it pops in with our K widget that highlights all, gets in all the comments like we put it in there in the class name, and then we also have this comment we added with our custom parameter. So you can see how you can take away a lot of that repetitive work of making a 5-word class thing and then maybe going and copying stuff from a previous class object or typing it all in before by making a template so that it's there every time. It also can help enforce team standards on your code so that you say this needs to happen every time. Well, there it is to prompt your team members to fill out the stuff as they make a class. So that is templates. And that kind of concludes what we were talking about. We talked about snippets and we talked about templates. Fairly straightforward but powerful tools to help you, streamline your process as you're writing code. So if you have any further questions about snippets or templates, or questions about design automation in general, say you have ideas for future KVA topics that you want to learn about in design automation, or maybe project ideas that you're kicking around, but you need somebody who's experienced in this to talk to get kind of format what's possible. Feel free to reach out to our team. You can connect with me here at my email, philip.cox@ketiv.com, and we're happy to help. And with that, I think I'll kick it back to you, DJ.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, turning iLogic rules into add-ins is where automation really starts to pay off. More power and less repetition. All right, to close out our Inventor Power Hour, we'll look at how VSCode snippet templates can help you code faster and stay organized. If you've ever caught yourself looking for a way to get started with automation, this one's going to save you a ton of time. All right, let's check it out.
So let's go into talking a little bit about custom
Thanks,
snippets within
everyone.
Inventor. So let's talk about why we would do something like this. So custom snippets, they're meant to help speed up your designs when you're working within Inventor iLogic. Great thing about it is you could reuse it across parts, assemblies, and drawings, so you don't have to remember those lines of code. You could easily share with your colleagues, the engineering department, as long as you manage it correctly. And it's easy to use and understand, which is all going back to coding efficiency when you're working within it. So the agenda that we're going to be covering today is we're going to create a snippet, teach you how to save it, talk about importing and exporting different snippet XMLs. And at the end, we'll touch on how the best way to manage it would be. Because once you start doing this, this is going to be another piece of data that is part of your engineering team. So let's go through the walkthrough. Right now, I'm going to pull up Inventor 2026. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some type of file. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a part file, a drawing file, an assembly file. In this case, I'm just going to open up an assembly file. And what we're going to do is we're going to make our way over to the iLogic. So one way to do that is you have an option to go through the tab. If you don't see it there, you can press plus, press iLogic, and that tab appears. Or if you want to go through the ribbon, you can go to manage. And then over here on the right side, you're going to see you have an iLogic tab. Either way, it takes you to the same place. What we're going to do is right click, and we're going to go ahead and add a new rule. So when we add a new rule, you can name it whatever you want. In this case, I'm just going to leave it as is. And then the iLogic window appears. So like I mentioned before, iLogic comes with a set of predefined snippets that are already here for you to use. So you have stuff from parameters, iProperties, iParts, iFeatures, bombs, you name it. A lot of the snippets are here. And then when you flip over to the next tab at the top to custom, you're going to see that there's a folder called My Snippet. And then when I expand that, these are custom snippets that are already predefined within Inventor. Autodesk provided an XML, and you can see which XML you're using for the custom snippet by pressing this right here, custom snippet properties. So when I press that, it tells you, hey, the XML that I'm reading for these custom snippets lives at this location. So it's program files, Autodesk. In my case, it's Inventor 2026. If you're using a different version of Inventor, it might be 25, 24, 23, etc. We're going to go ahead and go to the bin and then go into EZ-UCS. And the XML that it's reading currently is called iLogic user snippets. So that's what we're currently using. So let's go ahead and actually start by creating a custom snippet. So what we're going to do is you're going to put in some line of code here. In this case, I'm going to do dim part doc as part document equals this doc dot document. So pretty much what we're doing right now is getting the part document. Pretty simple line of code, but something that you might use very repetitively and you don't want to type it out every single time. Maybe you forget the syntax and then it makes it a little bit more difficult. So let's go ahead and make this a snippet. So first thing is your folder structure. You could either keep it under my snippets, or what we could do is we could insert a category. And in this case, we can name this category maybe something related to parts or maybe assemblies. In this case, I'm just going to name it something simple. I'm just going to call it Justin Snippets because these are going to be my snippets. So what I'm going to do now is at this point, I'm going to highlight this chunk of code that I created. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to capture the snippet. And then when I capture the snippet, this is the form that appears. It's going to prompt you for a title. In this case, I'm going to name it Get Part Document. And then for category, these are the folders that you could put it in. So I could either put it in the My Snippet that I have up here or Justin Snippets, which is what I just created. So I'm going to put it in there. And then for tooltip, what this is when you hover over snippets, it usually gives you a little reminder of like, hey, what is this snippet? Where am I going to use with the snippet? Or how can I apply this snippet? So in this case, you could either say something like it's going to return a part document. You could do something like that. It also has this button that says use code as tooltip. Sometimes the code is very simple, and if you read it, you understand what is happening. So if I wanted to, I could press that. Let me do that again. If I capture the snippet, I can just press use code as tooltip, and then that will come through. Since I already saved it before under my Justin Snippets, you're going to see that custom snippet appears right there. It says get part document. And when I hover over it, you're going to see return a part document. If you want to rename it, just say you have a spelling error in there or a typo, or maybe this wasn't descriptive enough. What you could do is you could right click rename, and you could even get back to the point where you want to edit it. All right, so that's the first snippet that I'm going to have in there. And then now at this point, I could delete it, the line of code if I wanted to. Let's go ahead and do another snippet that may be a little bit, it's going to be a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more complicated. So on the side over here, I'm just going to copy a chunk of code that I have, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. So you're going to see that this line's about 40 lines of code. And I'm going to capture everything in here, and I'm going to capture that snippet. And then here I'm going to name it. And what this chunk of code is doing is I'm going to explain to you guys that this chunk of code is something that we call push parameters. So I'm just going to name it push parameter. And what this code does is if you're at the master level assembly, so the very top assembly, you can push parameters down to the sub-assemblies and parts that are children of that master assembly. And it will update the master assembly accordingly, whether they're Boolean parameters, text parameter, or even numerical parameters. So that's what I'm going to use as my tooltip, because if I use code as tooltip, it copies all the code in there and this isn't going to be helpful. So My tooltip is going to be push parameters from master level assembly down to parts and subassemblies. And then now down here in the chunk of code, you're going to see stuff like I have a parameter that I was looking for that's called material color. And maybe it's not always going to be that parameter name or even the parameter supplier. So what I could do in here is in my chunk of code, I could erase that parameter and I could prompt the user to input their own parameter. So I could say something like, hey, let's insert parameter 1 right here. And then down here, maybe I want to insert parameter 2. And then even I could even put a comment down here is like users are able to insert as many parameters as necessary. Just so you know that, hey, you're not limited to 2, kind of gives a better understanding of what the code can do. And then from here, I could choose the category that I want to put it in. In this case, I'm going to put it in just in snippets. Go ahead and press OK. And you're going to see that my push parameter rule is now there. So before I delete this chunk of code that's in here, you're going to see that it shows material color and supplier here as the parameters. I'm going to delete all of that. And if I double click on my snippet now, when I go in there, it says, hey, insert parameter 1, insert parameter 2. And then at this point, when I reuse this code in a different part, different assembly, I can say, hey, my parameter 1 is this name. My parameter 2 is this name. And I can continually keep adding parameters to this list that I want to exclude. All right. So we just went over how to create custom snippets. Let's talk about saving them. So now that I create these 2 snippets, I don't want to override the default iLogic XML for custom. I'm going to create my own. So I'm going to press the save with the pencil right here. And I'm going to go to a directory to save it to. In here, I'm going to say something like Justin's iLogic snippet library. And then now when I go over here to my snippet properties, you're going to see that it references it from this location. So it's just KETIV KVA, and then the file that I'm reading is Justin's iLogic snippet library.xml. So at this point, if I wanted to create another snippet, I'm just going to get another chunk of code here. I'm going to paste this chunk of code. If I create another snippet here, and then I press OK, I'm creating another snippet within this XML. At this point, if I want to save, I'll press this save now. I don't want to save it as another XML. I want to keep the same XML and keep adding onto it. All right. So now that we've talked about saving your XML, let's talk about importing an XML. So if you press this right here, we can open a custom snippet file. And I have one that I already pre-made. It's called KETIV iLogic user snippets. I am going to press that and open it. And when I open it, you're going to see that the Justin snippets folder disappear because that folder doesn't exist in this XML. And when I go over to the properties, you're going to see that the property shows, hey, I'm reading from KETIV iLogic user snippets.xml. All right, so that's importing snippets. So, or actually, we talked about exporting. This is bringing it in. Let's talk about merging snippet files together. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Justin iLogic user snippet library. So I have this one open. My 3 snippets are still here. Let's just say I want to merge the KETIV library into mine. I will press this button right here, the plus, which is the merge. I'm going to select the KETIV iLogic user snippets. And when I press open, you're going to see that it now adds another folder to my XML because I'm still within the Justin iLogic snippet library. And that new folder is called KETIV snippets, and it has a predefined list of custom snippets that are made. So you're going to see that there's going to be some duplicate between my library and another person's library. So in this case, I have get part document. I might have named it differently. If I open up the KETIV snippets and I press the get part document, they're essentially identical code. So that's what happens when you merge two things together. It doesn't really keep track of, hey, I already have it here, I don't have it here. This really comes into play in the next topic, which comes to talking about how do we manage this. So best way to manage this is to make sure that we put this XML file, when you create it, you put it up in Vault. Let Vault be the central source of truth. And when you upload this XML up to Vault, it makes it easier for your colleagues, different engineers from different organizations, maybe different facilities. They can grab that XML and use it within their Inventor. And then when that comes into play, when you have it up there, someone can check it out, make changes, check it back in, and then everyone can get it. And you can keep on sharing and growing the snippet library. And just say you have something like your own local XML snippets that you use for your personal self, and it might not be something that you want to use as a whole organization. That's where the merge comes in. You can merge the company's iLogic snippet XML into your own personal snippet XML, and you can get all those new changes while you're working in Inventor.
All right, and that's a wrap on the Autodesk Inventor Power Hour. EZ-UCS, iLogic add-ins, and VSCode snippet templates all in one go. We did it. If today sparked some ideas in your own automation journey, make sure to reach out to us and we can help you do this, right? So if you need guidance on how to get started with automation, if you need help developing scripts, utilities, organizing your data, we're here to help. So please reach out to KETIV and let us know where you are in your journey and how we can help support you on it. All right, thanks for spending your power hour with us here on KETIV Virtual Academy this week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks everyone for joining. See ya.